following message is brought to you by Mike Koplitz. He is an ordained elder in the United Methodist Church and an ordained Messianic rabbi. In Luke's Gospel, chapter 9, starting on the 37th verse, we have an abbreviated story that we can find in Matthew and Mark's Gospel. In Mark's Gospel, we have the full narrative of what was going on. For some reason, Luke decided to abbreviate and in certain ways made it more difficult to understand. But we're going to look at it and see what's most important that Jesus is trying to tell us. The story is about a father who brings his only son before Jesus, who is suffering from epilepsy. We know that it is epilepsy because we get a description of what was happening to the boy. And before I say a lot more about this narrative, I have to tell you that people did not understand some of the medical conditions that occurred. In this case, epilepsy was known. However, in Jesus' day, the cause of epilepsy was attributed to demons possessing the person. Therefore, the crowd that surrounded Jesus to see the healing believed that the boy had been possessed by demons. There were people known as healers in those days, that certain roots mixed would calm down the effects of epilepsy. Perhaps Jesus also used these roots to help this boy. However, from the crowd's point of view, it didn't matter how Jesus cured the boy. What mattered was he cured the boy, thus ridding him of the demons. So we have a narrative that tells us that Jesus' disciples could not cure the boy, but that Jesus could. The disciples did not have a lot of experience in healing people. Jesus sent them out on a mission before this narrative, and they did what they could. However, they were only partially trained. Therefore, when we find out in Luke's Gospel that at this point they were unable to heal the boy, many times interpreters would say they didn't have enough faith yet. I would say instead that they weren't fully trained. They needed more education. Let me ask you this. Would you go to a doctor who wasn't quite a doctor yet because they hadn't finished medical school and expect to be fully healed? Of course not. You would want to go to a doctor who graduated from medical school and did his or her residencies and their internships and knew their stuff. The disciples were men who did not yet graduate from the school of Jesus. Therefore, they couldn't cure the boy because they weren't fully trained yet as to how to handle that situation. If you look at it that way, we see a different approach to the narrative. One of the things that caught my attention when reading this narrative is that even though the disciples failed to cure the boy, they did not give up. Instead, they were eager to learn why they didn't do it. Have there been any opportunities in your life where you couldn't do some tasks and you gave up instead of trying again? I bet if you think back, and I'm going to go way back to when we were little kids, that there was a point where you did not know how to tie your shoes. Even though your parents or your brother or sister showed you how to do it, you couldn't do it. Did you give up, or did you keep working until you figured out how to tie that shoe? Now, maybe that's part of the problem with kids growing up today. Now you're probably thinking, Mike, what do you mean by that? I do remember that when my grandchildren were young, instead of giving them shoes to tie, they were able to buy shoes that had Velcro, so they didn't have to tie them. They only learned to tie their shoes when they outgrew Velcro ones. So eventually they did learn how to tie their shoes, but for a period of time they gave up trying to learn it. Jesus was only on the earth teaching these men for 3 years. There was no time for them to say, I'll wait for a few years and try again. Instead, they came together, understood their failure, and they went out and got more training from Jesus, and then went out and helped people. So, after Jesus' death, the disciples were able to do the things that Jesus taught them to do. And one of them, of course, was healing people. When you fail at something, no matter what it is, do you quit or do you get determined to become good at whatever that is? It is sometimes too easy to say, I just can't do it. It was easy for me when I first got married to say to my lovely bride, I really don't know how to do the laundry properly because I was never taught to do it. During college, I would just put all the dirty clothes together and throw them in the machine and push the start button. What I learned is it can be a lot more complex. So for years, I didn't do laundry because I didn't know how to do it, and I didn't bother learning on how to do it. Then I got a bit older and a lot smarter and learned how the laundry should be done. And now I take care of myself. Each of us can learn how to do things. Now let me refer to Jesus for a moment. Have you ever gone out and talked to a friend or family member about a discipleship to Christ? If you have and you are successful the first time, fantastic. However, most of us are not successful the first time. Do you then give up? If the answer is yes, then you need to take the lesson here of the disciples who went out to help people and found out they couldn't do it until they had more training. Perhaps all you need is more training on how to tell people about our faith in Jesus Christ. Talk to people who have done evangelizing and find out how they do it. Learn how to go out and express your faith in God through Christ to others. As you learn, you will find that you will have more successes. Don't ever give up on trying to help people to find God. Remember, you're working for Christ, and that is a very honorable thing to do.
Thank you for listening to this message. I hope it blesses you in some way. And as always, shalom.